Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We are going to discuss leading. If you don't remember leading, just go back to the planning. Planning is setting the goals and deciding how best to achieve them. So, leading is then motivating people, influencing them, communicating with them to achieve the goals. We are going to discuss in leading 5 specific activities that are discussed under leading, deciding, communicating, motivating, selecting, and developing. So, leading is what again? Leading includes communicating with others, helping to outline a vision of what can be accomplished, providing direction, and motivating organizational members to put forth the substantial effort required. Leading is to cause people to take effective actions for attaining organizational goals, of course, willingly. Here are some leadership styles. On the x-axis we have people or people satisfaction or happiness, and on y-axis we have tasks. So the number one is shown here is a nice guy. Nice guy is that it places too much value on social acceptance while neglecting technical tasks. So he's a nice guy. Loser. Loser does not obtain acceptance from others and does not get the job done. So he's really a loser. Compromiser. Compromiser balances both the needs of people and task factors. So some people are happy with the compromiser, some are not, some tasks are achieved, some are not. So it's really compromising the situation. And then we have taskmaster. Taskmaster is interested in getting the job done right without concern for human feelings. He is good in giving tasks without considering that people are happy or not, giving them strict deadlines and not listening to them, not listening to their excuses. And number 5 is ideal manager. He gets the job done at the same time, makes everyone happy. And this is the characteristic of a leader. Here we are going to compare management versus leadership, or manager versus leader. Managers, they values results. Leaders values relationships. Managers takes few risks. Leaders takes large risks. Managers are somewhat impersonal. Leaders are personal and caring. Managers conform to rules of others. Leaders are not receptive to the rules of others. Now, it doesn't mean that he breaks always the rules, but where the rules are flexible, where the rules can be neglected, leader will not follow those rules strictly. As an example, the rules are that we have to take attendance. We have at your attendance system here in Oman, in Sultan Qaboos University here, and some instructors, they strictly follow the rules. They take the attendance, they give the warning notices, and they also even gave notice for withdrawals. Whereas some are not caring for that. They do take attendance, but they if the student is missing so many lectures, you may just send them email privately without giving them warning notices, and then perhaps motivate them, and in this way he can achieve the targets, he can achieve the objectives. So leaders are not necessarily accepting or following the rules blindly. Managers, they like to be like status quo. They go by the flow. Low innovation is there. Whereas leaders, they have new ideas and they are innovative. Managers are functional. They analyze, evaluate, solve. Leaders are non-functional. They inspire and motivate. In a nutshell, good managers do the things right, they are efficient, and good leadership does the right things, which means they are effective. Both managers and leaders are necessary in an organization. Now we are going to discuss the different functions of leading, which we can say is deciding or decision making, communicating, motivating, and selecting people and developing people. Selecting people and developing people we have also discussed when we talked about organizing. In organization function, human resource management is part of organizing. In controlling, we also discussed that as a preliminary control, the right people are selected and they are trained so that the control is in place before they start their job properly. Now we are discussing under leading. Also, we are going to discuss under leading as well, because leaders are the one who develop people, who make leaders, and they guide them with their personal examples and motivate them, etc. So we will discuss this developing people as well under over here. Deciding. Deciding is to arrive at conclusions and judgment. A decision is nothing but the choice among several available options to solve a problem or address an issue. Deciding is to assure that the quality of decision made remains high. Now there is a full chapter in your book on decision making. We will not go into that detail. However, in the coming few weeks, we will be discussing decision analysis from management science point of view, and that is interesting to see how we make decisions when we have some probabilities available, or we don't have anything, uncertainty environment is there, how to make decisions. We will discuss these things in the coming lectures. Now here we will discuss only superficially just the guidelines for decision making. Study management cases for acquiring close to real world experience in decision making. There are many management cases available. For example, Harvard Business School published those decisions, management cases in which the managers took over an organization which was under stress and turned around and make it a successful organization. There are several studies, different type of studies where the decisions were made, and we can learn from these experiences. Prioritize problems in need of decisions. We may have several problems. We may have dozens of problems. We need to prioritize them and select the one which needs more attention and solve them. Apply a rational process to guide the decision-making process. This is another guideline. Of course, some managers, they make decisions with their gut feelings. They have just some instincts, gut instincts are there, and they make the decisions. But that decisions, although it may turn out the decision is good, but it is recommended to apply a rational process to guide the decision-making process. The rational decision-making process comes from logic. It is a scientific method, basically collecting the data, the facts, then deciding about the real problem, and after that selecting the alternatives and choosing the best alternative and then applying that alternative. This is a rational process to guide the decision-making process. Involve those to be impacted by the decision. Of course, consensus building, foster implementation. We have discussed this also when we talked about management by objectives. In management by objectives, we discussed that the manager sits with the employees and decide about they both decide about the targets to achieve, the goals to achieve, and they have mutually agreed on those goals. And finally, it helps the employee to own this commitment, and eventually it helps them to motivate. So if you involve the persons who will be impacted from the decisions, the consensus building, the consensus actually builds implementation easier, and that is what we are talking about here, that we should involve who will be impacted by the decision, because if we don't involve them, there will be resistance. Some more guidelines. Make decision based on incomplete or uncertain information on hand. Assumptions should be introduced. Of course, we talked about that the business world is and the environment is always changing. It's very dynamic. For some businesses, the environment is the external components are changing, and so there a lot of information is unknown or vague. So we have to introduce the assumptions while making some decisions. There will be always cases where the information will be not known. Take the necessary risks. Of course, if you don't take risks, then you will not do anything. It is do nothing kind of an option. Delay decisions making until the last allowable moment, but within the applicable deadlines. Avoid making no decisions, which is a poor sign of leadership. Now, it is good to delay the decision if the time permits, if the deadline is not yet near. we can wait because it is possible that we may have a new data, and with this new data available, we might change our decision. So it's good to, as a guideline, we can delay the decision until the last allowable moment. But if we don't take the decision, then it is a sign of poor leadership. Decisions not to make. Decisions which are not pertinent or applicable to problems at this time, we should avoid them. Decisions that cannot be implemented effectively because of business priority or resource constraints, or the value created is not good enough, then there is no need to take such decisions. And decisions to be made by others, we shouldn't take that. Especially, for example, if the manager has delegated its authority downward, then he should trust his employees to take the decisions rather than making the decision by himself. We talked about rational decision making. Rational decision making process is shown over here. We have, let's say the problem is there, assess the problem, collect the facts. Collecting the facts means collecting the data relevant to that problem, and define the real problem. It is possible that by initially looking at the problem, that may be the symptom, the cause may be different. So when you define the real problem, you go to the causes, and that may be the real problem. Then develop the alternatives and select the best alternative and implement it. After implementing, there should be some kind of a feedback going, which shows to monitor your decision, how well it went. Now, the second thing which we are going to discuss is communicating. Communicating is to create understanding. The whole idea of communication is to create understanding. And to create understanding is by conveying facts, viewpoints, impressions, and or feelings. Some guidelines for communication. Communicate with a clear purpose. The engineering manager must have a clear purpose in mind and ensure that the message is understood and retained. Select proper form of communication. Nowadays we have several ways to communicate: face-to-face talk, phone conversation is there, emails are there, video conference, staff meeting, written memos, web postings, net meeting, etc. So choose the proper form of communication. Be honest and open. Welcome suggestions, offer pertinent information to dispel fears. The managers should be straightforward and honest, respect confidential information, welcome suggestions, anticipate resistance to changes, and dispel fears by disclosing full information. And keep communication channels open, which means that it's easy to talk with the manager. If the manager is keeping the communication channel open, he can listen to the employees, their reservations, their fears, etc. So these should be dispelled. How to communicate. Now, there are 4 key actions to take to effective to achieve effective communication is by asking, listening, and telling and understanding. Asking open-ended questions to gain new knowledge. Open-ended questions, those which cannot be answered by yes or no, should be raised to gain new knowledge. Examples of open-ended questions include, for example, what are you planning to buy today at the supermarket? Or how exactly did the fight between the two of you start? Or how the fire started on the plant, etc. These are just open-ended questions which do not have clear yes or no answer. Why we do ask such questions, open-ended questions? Because with that you gain more knowledge. Telling. Telling is to inform employees and managers about problems and pertinent development. Engineering managers need to exercise judgment as to what to tell and what not to tell. A typical rule of thumb used in industry is that information is dispersed based on the need to know. One of the things which we discussed in our first lecture on management was the roles of managers, and one of the role is disseminator. So the managers or the leaders are the one who inform the employees so that they do not get the things in surprise. Listening. Listening is enhanced understanding by listening and exercising control of your own urge to talk. There is always, self-discipline needed, because the good leaders, they listen to their employees, listen to dispel their fears. They keep the communication channels open. We discuss these things. So listening is part of a good leader. And then understanding. The ultimate goal of communication is to promote understanding, to hear with the head and to feel with the heart. Understanding also requires a lot of judgment, and one can assess the degree of sincerity by observing body language, facial expressions, tone of voice, etc.